Do you want to hear about my journey? Oh, I'd be more than happy to. My name is Brad Haizlip. I'm from Northwest Indiana. It's on actually the border of Illinois and Indiana, and it's like 25 miles east of Chicago. So it's a Chicago suburb. I graduated from high school in '85, and from high school, I went on to the big leagues. I went on to college, and I got my degree from Purdue University. And I studied information systems and information technology. And after graduating from Purdue, I continued my education and I went to the American Academy of Art in Chicago. And I got my degree there in advertising and graphic design. So 38 or so years later, I've been in the creative industry. And it's been an awesome journey. And I'm still continuing. So and I love it, and I no regrets on any of it. It's been a fantastic experience. Okay, now let's go way back, maybe a couple of years. This is when I was little. I've always been creative. I've always had an eye for design, and just and even just because I would read everything. I love to read, and so when I was younger, I would always draw. I constantly drew just imaginary figures, or even just like cartoon characters. I'm just about everything. I would just draw. And 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 when I was doing that though, it was just something I enjoyed doing. And there was no like reason of it's just that my brain was always thinking, always going, so I would always draw. And I kept so many of those images too for years, and I still have a lot of them actually, and it's just something that I've always had the creative bug, and even like when I got to my early teens, I would start writing poetry, and with the love of reading, even with poetry, I read all types of poetry, and seems like the style when I was starting, it had to rhyme. To me, it just had to rhyme. But of course, that's just a style and just what I wanted to come across. But obviously, poetry doesn't have to just rhyme. It's a feeling from within too. So, but yeah, I would write poetry on just everything. And again, I would keep all that poetry. I kept it all. And as time progressed, even at that time, even now, if some of you can go back as far as myself into photography, one of the cameras that I've always had in my pocket, and this was called the Kodak 110. It was just a little camera, and when you wanted to take pictures, you open up the door so the lens can see. And when you took a picture, on the very bottom there was a little lever or a latch. You could just push it forward to advance the film. So again, that's film, and it was like a little cartridge you put in the back. And so I would use that. That's what I started off as, and I took pictures of all that. But that was part of my process, my learning of creativity, and because I love photography, but as time progressed, and I would keep all that, so, but like in like when I got to high school, the thing is with high school, I had way more than enough credits to graduate, and so I only had like two classes my senior year. And so from there, it's called a Hammond Area Career Center. It's like an Ivy Tech. like a trade school, but it was part of school. So so when I finished my 2 classes, I would go to Hammond Career Center and learn printing. So printing technology was the class. So everything from taking the picture, developing it, and it was that whole process of putting it onto an E-plate, and an E-plate, and you put it on this machine, and you flip it, and it shoots that image onto that plate. And so, and it gave you a negative too. So you would take that plate, you take it to the press, printing press, and then you would print that image. But at that time, it was key line and paste up too. And so everything was all by hand, and everything was like on the negative. We had a black marker, so if there was any like a little scratch or anything that didn't belong onto that image, we had to black it out because otherwise it would print. So so that was part of that journey of getting into more of the profession, but as the creativity. And from high school, then and as time progressed, when I went to Purdue, it was a co-op program, and it was at Inland Steel, and that was in the graphic research department, and that was pretty awesome experience because I learned at that time too of the the key line and paste up, the brochures, flyers, the whole thing, and that was really you know stepping up into more of the big league because other people were seeing it and receiving it. And so I was learning a lot with that. And then and when I went to the American Academy of Art, I also was part of a co-op program. And this was pretty awesome experience. If some of you have heard of like you have artists that do window displays, and I was part of that. And if some of you remember, like Carson Perry Scott's or Marshall Field's, they're huge stores. It's like a Macy's, you know. But in Chicago, we had 5+ stories of merchandise. I mean, it was beautiful, and it was close to like Water Tower downtown. They're not there anymore, but at that time, see, we were part of the seasonal team, like at Christmas time and so on, and we had the beautiful windows, because you get people walking by the windows all the time, and at Christmas time, I was able to work with some awesome, very creative people from the Children's Television Workshop, is electric company, and also Sesame Street. So I worked with those individuals that we did a lot of animatronics in the windows. That was a great experience. And and so from there, I was able to, work with that team there, and there was so many things going on at that time too for myself, which I wanted to learn everything, you know. And so that was some great stuff. I learned a lot with them at Purdue. I I noticed that there was a class that I wanted to participate in, and it was an adult education class, and it was actually like I believe a 7-week course, and it had nothing to do with my regular school, my school classes. This was outside of that, but it caught my attention because it was on self-publishing, and I thought, wow, I wanted to check this out. So, and I remember the instructor, she asked me, so what did you want to write your book on? And I just knew it was going to be an old-time comedian quiz book of some sort. But at that time, I just said a comedian quiz book. I didn't know all the details. I didn't know any of that yet. Even though, I did sketches and stuff of the comedians and that, but I really didn't know how I was even going to put it together or anything. Because growing up, I mean, like all of you, coming home from school, I remember, the Three Stooges would be on, or the Little Rascals, or like on weekends. It was a special thing though. You see the Marx Brothers or Laurel and Hardy or even Abbott and Costello. These were like, you know, they're just, so powerful. If you're really into the comedians, and these are the comedians that actually started everything. Charlie Chaplin, you know, and but when I was taking this course, I was learning a great deal. But at that time, it was so different than it is today. Then even with self-publishing, that was just like, what is self-publishing? That was like breaking the surface. You know, it was almost like, okay, self-publishing, but at the same time, you had to go through like a publisher. And at that time also it was, you had to put some money up front for them to even do anything. You know, so I was learning all that part of it too, like the money part of it, and also, okay, how am I even going to put this together? How do I even reach out to anybody? Because you figure at that time too, we're talking, you know, late '80s, you know, and it's like the internet was just, coming about, and but it's like, okay, I'm just gathering information more or less, and so when the course was done, I had a good idea on what I wanted to do, but not how to do it, and but I, like a lot of my projects and so on, I keep everything like in a folder. I mean, everything from like what kind of quiz questions, or just sketches, and just everything research. That was the biggest thing on all. And as you guys know too, research is huge. You have to gather your information. If it's not hard copies, it's up here. You know, so so I kept everything in folders for, I mean, years. But it never left my mind though. It was always in the back of my mind. And to me, I look back at it and say, well, the timing wasn't there. It just wasn't right timing, you know. Because even though I would pull it out now and then, the folder, and you know sort of get ideas and just refresh things, and I would always put it back in the file cabinet, just always, and then that's how it evolved. And as time went on, the internet, you can gather information more quickly. You can contact people quicker, and it just grew. And I just remember I kept saying, like, okay, this year I'm going to do something. I'm going to do it. But I did that for like 3 years, and then that third year, it just like it just like a light switch, and then I finally pulled it out again and said, okay, let's get something started. And I think that was like, it just snowballed. It just then the ball rolled. You know, it wasn't like, okay, this day I'm going to do this. It just happened. You know, and so when I pulled all that, the drawings and questions and research papers, I mean everything, I pulled everything out. And when I started looking at everything, I was thinking, okay, how am I going to piece this together? How am I going to start? And the biggest thing too for my research on the old time comedian quiz book was not just watching the footage, and I read I mean, I read books on the comedians that I wanted to put in this book. But the thing is, okay, now I'm aware of copyright law, and just you just can't take things and just put them in a book and then off you go. So there was a lot of that kind of thinking process and reaching out. And so when I started this book, and actually all the graphics and all the information in the book is from myself and from the families and the the the, the companies and stuff that either represented them. They are all part of that too, and which I'm very grateful for. They all participated in this because I'm actually writing, even though it's a quiz book, it's a fun book, but still they want accuracy, in which 100%. They want accuracy, plus two, they want it fun, and that's really what I wanted to do. And so when I started putting this together, okay, I started gathering all my quiz questions and all that, and I started laying it out, finally laying it out. And okay, so now I had a good idea because it was you know, pretty well along now. And so I thought, okay, now the first comedian in this book is W.C. Fields. And so I went to wcfields.com. And so I explained to them what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it and the illustrations and so on. And now I remember it was like 2 days later, my phone rang, and I picked it up and I said hello, and the person on the phone that was calling me was Harriet Fields. She was the granddaughter of W.C. Fields. So now talk about being blown away. I mean, it's like, okay, your brain just had to register who you're talking to, and which and from that point, and from each comedian thereafter, because in the first comedian quiz book, there's 8 comedians. So I did that same process, same like layout, same, with the questions and all that, and the so grateful that every single one of them were with me 100%, and believe me, I made some wonderful friends through that process, and just the fact that I was able to talk to these family members, even the organizations who represent them. I was talking to these people and like walking me through, you know, this is a good question. Don't use this one. This is better. It worked out so nice. And and just talking with Harriet, I mean, from that point forward to today, I mean, it's a wonderful feeling that, and I've been on the radio with her. I mean, it's I talked to Suzanne Lloyd. She's the granddaughter of Harold Lloyd. I talked with Bill Marx. He is the son of Harpo Marx of the Marx Brothers. Chris Costello. She's the daughter of Lou Costello, Costello of Abney Costello. I mean, I never planned that. You know, I never thought that would ever happen. It just happened and it flowed and the doors would open. And it's such a wonderful experience, that whole thing. And same thing, like when the second comedian quiz book, when I did that same process, and it's just that more doors opened. Not planning on, okay, this is going to happen. It just happens. You know, and so I'm so grateful for the families and the organizations that they're behind the books. You know, and it's a great feeling because of the fact is that every single question and answer is 100%. It's accurate. There's no guesswork, you know, and all the graphics they approved. I mean, so these books are genuine. There's nothing funny about. I mean, there is funny about them, but you know, legal points and everything. That's the thing you have to be careful with as well. For all you writers and people that want to write a book, do your research, homework, all that, and make sure that you know you cross the T's and dot the I's. Everything is 100% all the way. Yeah, soon after the second old time comedian quiz book, I went into poetry. I pulled out the folder and started to go back and look at all the poetry that I've written. And now, because my wife has written poetry, so we started pulling all our stuff out, and then we started looking at all the different poetry that we've written. And so that's where then the book started to fall into place. And and so once we started putting all the poetry in there, then all the illustrations and all that information we put into our book, and then that's how that came about. Because when I was little, I would write poetry, and when we would go on trips, I'd be writing poetry, and then I would read my poetry to my parents, and then that's how I would actually edit it and did it make sense? Did it sound right? I did all that stuff then, and so now when we brought all our poetry together, we put it in a nice book, all the illustrations and then and that was the poetry book, and then soon after that, the next thing you know, because was my cloud book, in which that's a fun activity book for everybody. We all grew up, and we still do. I mean, I look all the time, look up at the clouds, see what kind of images I see. What's causing it? What causes the rain? What causes snow, sleet? Tornadoes. What causes like hurricanes? So all that stuff. Even growing up, I've had it in books and or folders. And so it was another process of putting all that together and doing the research on what forms clouds, what kind of clouds are there, and there's all kinds of types of clouds, characteristics of clouds, forms of clouds. I mean, just the history of clouds and just weather, and that's part of the nature. I've always enjoyed nature, and I look back at this, at growing up and even today, it's like, it's a full circle, from my comedian quiz books to my poem book to now my weather book. It all, makes sense, so, and, and, and then, this is just the beginning of my journey, and I have several projects, in the works. I have 4 to 5 more books that are going to be coming out. They're in the preliminary stages, but I mean, it's all gonna come about, and it's just that it just happened. Things just happened and started to evolve, and just come together. After the books have been published and they've been out there, always thinking and researching for other ways of promotion, marketing, advertising, my books, and also thinking about, okay, how can I help others? Maybe there's authors that just don't know what to do, even don't even know what to do with how to even start their first book. and there's so much information out there and networking opportunities, to help others get started. So after a little time there, I was trying to think, okay, what can I do, for myself and for other authors to be exposed? What can I do? So after some time there, after researching and networking and talking with so many other authors and just people in general of what to look for and help guide others. And so, and with the background I have, I thought, okay, let's start getting some ideas. And I for like the logo and so on, I started just doing thumbnail sketches and just throwing out ideas and just and coming up with something that will stand out and to relate to what I'm about to start doing. And after a while, well, my team and myself have come up with a good logo. And so now, okay, now the next steps. We did all the research, and because we can do it all ourselves. We don't have to have an outfit or another individuals to do it for us. So so we came up with this thing. Well, let's begin. Let's start. Let's get something together and launch this. And so the author's table came about. And so this was a platform where I can actually, help myself and definitely help others. Let's launch something to, help launch them, you know, and just get exposed to everybody out there to help with their books, and definitely get guidance, and help them become a better author. We cover so many topics on the author's table. I mean, everything from ISBNs, marketing, what's the process? What started, your process? Who inspired you? What was your motivation? I mean, after, it was about it's been on like 4 years now, and it's going strong, and it's awesome. And now it's not just on YouTube. It's on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. I mean, so it's this was something I never thought would happen. I never even thought of, well, someday I'm going to create a podcast to help other authors. I talk to authors all around the world, and everybody has such great feedback, and we're all here to guide each other. You know, the opportunity's there. Take advantage of it. And I'm so proud of that. I'm proud of everything that I've accomplished. I mean, especially like as an author, never thought of it. You know, but looking back at all this, it's like it was meant to be. And there was a reason why this has all come about. And so I think you as the viewer also has their story to tell. We all have stories, and we all want to express and to reach out and to branch out, not just our craft, but also to help others. And so by myself starting this podcast, it was a wonderful opportunity to do so. I love doing it, and everyone that has been on the program love it. And I've had several authors that have been on there more than once. So, and not just to have them on the program, but they've written more books, and they've been with marketing. Some of them really didn't know how to even begin that, you know. So they've taken advice from myself and from others. And so when they branched out into marketing, exposing more of their, not just their book, but maybe, branding, showing more of their, maybe their subject matter, creating merchandise. I mean, it's just huge. And it's such a wonderful feeling to have that, for others to come back on and say thank you. I mean, that's a big thing, you know. And so and I'm going strong with it. So I mean, there's no end, and so the future is, it's endless, So I wish, you know, that everybody has that same journey, that wonderful feeling of when you're creating something, you put yourself behind it 100%. So, and that's just, and this is just a little brief synopsis of my journey. I mean, I can talk for forever on the things that I have accomplished and done, and I'm all proud of it. And there's a reason for every bit of it, you know. And so, and if you're interested in being on the author's table, please sign up. Reach out to me. We'll get you on the schedule, and we'll definitely get you out there so you can share your journey. So thank you, and I hope to see you soon. Until then, happy writing and wish you the very best. Bye bye.